Hey guys, since we are doing our back to school specials right now and everything, I was scrolling through Facebook, and Designs by JuJu came up, and they were showing this cute little mug rug design for teachers, and so I thought I would show you how to do this. It has piecing in the hoop and some applique, and I'm going to add quilting to it and change the lettering on it, and so let's get started. Okay, so I've downloaded the design from JuJu's website onto my desktop, and I've gone into the data transfer program to send it to my machine. And so any Brother or Baby Lock machine that has the wireless capability can use this program. And so I'm going to be doing the 6x10, and so I just select it, shoot it down here to the bottom, and then just click on the little, I have my machine selected that I'm sending it to, and then I just click on the little icon of the machine, and it sent it over to it. So now we're gonna go to the machine. Okay, so over on the machine, I just go into the little Wi-Fi symbol, and there's the design, set it, and send it to the embroidery screen. And I've printed off the instruction sheet, and so it has all the different sizes, and then what to cut your fabric pieces, and then the instructions. So I'm just going to, what it's going to stitch off first is a placement line for the batting. Okay, so now I'm just going to lay the piece of batting down, and then it's going to do a tack down. Okay, now it says to go ahead and trim the batting down, and I think that's just to get it kind of out of the seam allowance pretty much, so when we're turning it right side out. So, okay, now what's going to stitch is going to be a placement line for the inside piece of fabric, the middle section. And so what we're about to do is kind of the piecing in the hoop technique. What it does is it stitches off kind of a template, and then you take your first piece of fabric and you lay it down right side up. So we're just covering up that piece of that placement line, and then it's going to stitch a tack down. Okay, after it tacks that piece down, I'm going to go ahead, and the way JuJu's doing it is she says to go ahead and trim. In the instructions, she just trimmed on either side, but I guess I'm going ahead and trimming it on both sides. Okay, and what's going to stitch next is going to be a placement line for the next piece that we're laying down for the piecing. And then you're going to lay this piece of fabric down so that it's right side down. So it's just like you're piecing with your sewing machine. And I like to cover up that fabric, that bottom fabric, and stitch the seam line basically. So it's right sides to right sides. Okay, and then this is a Kimberbell kind of trick. You take the little fabric folding pin that has a little starch solution in it, and you run it along that seam line, and then that just helps flip that fabric over. And then what it's going to do is stitch a little tack down to hold this piece in place. Okay, now it's going to come over and do the exact same thing over on this side. And so first I'm going to stitch the placement line for my next piece that I'm piecing. lay lay this piece down, cover that up, and then sew the seam. And run that little starch pin over that seam line, and then flip it. And if it was something that had more piecing, then it would just go on to the next placement line. You would trim the excess fabric, lay your next piece right side down, sew the seam, and flip it. But since these are the only two pieces that are pieced, we're going to go ahead and tack this side down. Now, in the instructions, what it's going to do next is go right into the applique of the little pencil. But I decided I wanted to add a little quilting design over this whole thing. So I'm going to do that in the machine. So I'm just going to get out of this design. And so I'm going to go home. I'm going to go into the Design Center, or on the Baby Locks, it's the IQ Designer. I'm going to pull up a square, and I'm going to size that to, okay, so I've got it sized to the 5 3/4 by 7 3/4, and then I'm just going to fill it with a quilt design, and I'm just going to use the stipple. And then I don't want it to stitch an outline around that, so I'm going to apply the no-sew. And then I'm going to see about how big a stipple this is. That's kind of tight. I want it a little bit bigger. So I'm going to, that's the middle one there, enlarge that. That's pretty good. Okay, so then I'm just going to set that, say okay, and then stitch that off. Okay, so I got it quilted with that little stipple design. Now I'm just going to go back into embroidery, go back to my Wi-Fi, bring up that pencil again, and then forward through the steps that I've already done. Okay, so I can see it's ready to do the placement line for the little eraser. And what JuJu does is, on this particular design, she's going ahead and she's doing the placement line and tack down for each applique piece, and then is going to come back and do the little satin stitch or the cover stitch over everything. So I've just threaded up with kind of the neutral color thread, and I'm going to stitch that placement line for the eraser. And then you just lay that fabric piece down and stitch the tack down. Make sure your fabric piece is covering up that placement line. And now I've got to trim that away. After you trim that piece down, it's going to stitch the placement line for the top part of the pencil, the wood part. That piece down, stitch the tack down, And some designs, some companies will go ahead and do like the cover stitch over part of it. And when it does that, I'll go ahead and thread up the machine with the color that I want to do that cover stitch and do the placement line, the tack down, and then go into that cover stitch. But because this one's doing all the placement lines and all the tack downs and then coming back and doing the cover stitch, I can just use that neutral color thread until we start doing the cover stitches. And so now I'll trim this piece down. Okay, now it's doing the placement line for the pencil. Lay the fabric down, make sure you're covering all of it. And when I was picking out my fabrics, I actually went and got a pencil and I was holding it up to all my fabrics to see if I was matching the colors. It's leaving a little notch there because there's going to be a little applique part and one there. And I like the way when she does the tack down, she goes around it twice, and that just adds a little bit more security when you're trimming. And then you do want to be careful when you're taking your hoop off and on, because you are doing that so much in the applique process. You can actually like hold on to this bracket that's on the arm of your embroidery module to slide it off, so because you don't want to move that and get it out of position, which you have to pull on it really hard to move it, but it can be done if you pull too hard. So now I'm just going to trim this piece down, and when I'm trimming, all I'm doing is I'm taking this blade. I always have my applique piece that I'm trimming away, the part that I'm getting rid of, down towards closest to me. And then I just take that blade of the scissors and butt it right up next to the stitches, and I kind of pull up on the fabric just a little bit and just take little snips as you go, and then rotate the hoop around so that the next piece that I'm trimming is next to me or closest to me. And so you just keep rotating your hoop around as you trim. And if you have these little curved applique or embroidery scissors that help you get down in the hoop, that makes it easy. Now it's doing the placement line for the two little hearts. Now in the instructions it said to cut like a 6x6 piece, and my fabric that I had, I'm just using the scraps, wasn't a 6x6, so it's longer. So I'm hoping that this is going to cover. There, if I lay it like that, it will. There we go. And I could just cover up like this heart, let it stitch the tack down, stop the machine, trim that fabric, and then move it down here. And that kind of helps you save fabric, save your scraps. But I'll just go ahead and let it stitch this heart, or tack down here. Okay, and now I'm just trimming the two hearts. Okay, so now it's just, we've got all the applique pieces the placement line and the tack downs stitched, and so now it's just going to start going into the cover stitch, which is going to be the satin stitch over all the applique pieces, and we'll change colors for each fabric, and then it will go in and stitch the little flowers and all the little detail stitches. So we're just going to keep sewing. Okay, so it's finished stitching all of the cover stitch and then all the different little designs and everything. Now, the last thing, or one of the last things that it stitches is the word teacher, but I've decided I don't want to stitch teacher. I want to sew something else. I'm going to stitch like have a great year. And if you noticed, we had to change machines because we actually sold the machine that I was stitching on a while ago out from underneath me. So we've moved to this machine. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to get out of this design and I'm going to go back into the embroidery and I'm going to type in have a great year. Okay, so I've got have a great year programmed in. I'm going to set that. I'm gonna rotate it, and then I need to see where to place it. So I'm gonna scan my hoop, and then on my screen I can see, okay, it's still a little bit too big, so I can go in to, oh, I need to return. Go into edit. Okay, so now I'm just going to select each part and I'm going to size it down and then move it a little bit closer. So I'm just going to keep playing with it until I get it positioned where I want it. There, I like it. And being able to scan what's in your hoop and then seeing how it's going to land on your fabric that's in your hoop makes it so much easier. So now I just have to send that over to the embroidery machine and then stitch this off. Okay, so it finished stitching have a great year. And so now we need to finish up the mug rug. So I've been going kind of in and out of the design because I added the quilting and then I changed and didn't stitch off teacher and all that. If you are just stitching off the mug rug from start to finish, you wouldn't have to be going in and out of it. So I just brought the design back up, sent it to the embroidery screen, and then I just need to go to the very last stitch out, and I'm going to take the 2 pieces of backing fabric, and it tells in the instructions how big to cut these, and then fold them in half, and I'm going to lay these over the stitching. The folds are going to be towards the center and they're going to be overlapping each other. And then I like to go ahead and tape this area where these edges are overlapping, so that way your foot won't get caught on that. So just take a piece of tape and tape it down and make sure it's stuck good. And then it's just gonna stitch this construction stitch all the way around. Okay, and now we're just going to remove the tape, and then I'm going to unhoop it and we're gonna trim all of this about 1/4 of an inch away from the stitching line, and we can just use your rotary cutter, trim it, and then you'll turn it right side out through this opening. And there we got it turned right side out and pressed, and we got it done. And it's pretty cute. Now, since it comes in all the different sizes, again, this was the 6x10, and that's a good size for a mug rug, but you could do like the 8x12 and make like a little banner that would hang or something. So all kinds of different uses for a teacher this year.